The footage that you're watching in the background is me. I'm currently opening some Pokemon packs of the newest set, Champion's Path. I'm looking for something specific, but before I get to what that is, I'd like to tell you why I enjoy this process so much in the first place. I've been playing card games for the better part of 3 years now, and throughout it all, I've done my fair share of trading, collecting, battling, and even some online selling of cards. I mean, seriously, I've sold almost 250 cards, and while that might not seem like a lot, for me it was a serious undertaking, especially when there was a good amount of cheating and scamming going on that was done to me on my end of the selling, as it's much easier to believe a buyer than it is to believe the seller. One thing is for certain though, I've spent up a hell of a lot more money than I've ever made back, so don't ever think that it's a lucrative business to get into. It's a game marketed to people who play a game. Not exactly those who want to make money from it, so you reap what you sow. Despite that warning, the secondary market for these cards are actually in the multi-millions, and within good reason. You can see from the prices of these cards that there are a ton of well sought out pieces, and there's quite a bit of people willing to put out a large sum of money just to have them. One such card is the PSA 10 First Edition base set Shadowless Holographic Charizard, going for nearly $10,000 on eBay, and probably a lot more sometime in the past. On the other side of the spectrum, we have Pokemon's older brother in the trading card game, Magic the Gathering, with their Black Lotus, a card that could rival Charizard in an elusive price tag of $6,000 and seemingly rises as time passes. I'm actually trying to pull a gem of my own from one of these sets, so try to join me in my journey as I talk about why I love these games, and also in my attempts to score it big in my crippling addiction to gambling, which turns out to be 100% legal in this market for some reason. I think it's only fair that I start out by talking about what this entire game is based on. Trading cards. Something that runs back as far as the 1800s and the early 1900s. Starting out as collectible pictures of baseball members with accompanying pieces of chewing gum. Over time, this market was actually pretty popular, until eventually it evolved into a tabletop game, where the cards were a part of a gameplay as well as tradable. And it's from this that it spawned an entire genre of the branch from those baseball cards. Instead of pretty pictures to look at, an entire market revolving around the game was born. From Yu-Gi-Oh! To Vanguard to Magic the Gathering, and even some digital card games like Hearthstone and... Artifact. While I've tried my hand at a lot of different card games, the only ones that have seemed stuck with me were two different games, which is Pokemon and Magic the Gathering. While you hear the names of card games like that thrown around pretty often when associated with trading card games, there is actually a pretty wide array of card games out there, one such being Dragon Ball or even Star Wars. I could probably bet that if there's a show that you enjoy, there's a chance of there being a card game of it somewhere out there. Weirdly enough, did you know that Pokemon even has its spin-off of card games? Quite a lot of them actually. Obviously none of them managed to take off like the original, but it's interesting that a game like that could even have an imitation of itself. You'd probably think that since card games have been in the limelight for so long that it surely must be dying down by now, but actually, trading card games are near an all-time high, especially with the help of digital interfaces for players to play on. With the rise of esports, it's only guaranteed to go up from here, as the scene of competitive gaming is beginning to top $1 billion in revenue. Something that could only grow with the digital entry of how you play these games. You know, in these hard times. Digital interfaces only make it easier for you to get into the game, as not only does a person have to spend a good bit of money to get the physical cards just to get started, but they also lack the need of commitment to go to a comic book shop on specific dates and times. All someone has to do is log on and get started, which really boosts the confidence of a new player, especially when they're not surrounded by a bunch of pros that are just going to stomp them on their first time playing. Back on the physical sides of things, however, buying starter decks are actually where people usually start. Magic used to give out these for free, but for some reason they've recently stopped, and that probably has something to do with the digital age, I guess. However, typically in these decks, there are usually a good amount of cards that are structured to help a user begin to play right out of the box. These decks are typically pretty weak, but the real fun is cracking booster packs. These packs will help you build upon those decks. Then, eventually over time, once the player has cracked enough cards, they can construct their own deck with these cards. Mostly when opening up a booster pack, there's typically going to be a bunch of jank cards that you usually wouldn't really use. Accompanying that is one rare card, which is typically a much more powerful card that will be used in much more situations. That or have a standalone factor that would make it a lot more usable. Typically a better way to get cards for your deck probably wouldn't be opening packs, however, as it would likely be just trading cards around with your friends. You'd be surprised how many cards that you accumulate that you don't really use or need that other people actually want to get from you. Especially when you have a whole binder of cards where everyone can look through it and get their own while you can look through theirs. In this, they're giving up the kind of cards that they don't want for the cards that you want, and vice versa, everyone helping each other out. Though, to be perfectly honest, you're probably going to go buy singles for your deck. It's actually perfectly normal, and I don't think anyone should feel bad for doing it. Literally everyone does it. That and it's the optimal way to actually play a certain deck that you want to play. These cards that you wish to buy can typically be picked up by your local gaming store or online through a seller like me. Trading in and buying at the local levels is probably a better option of the two. Mostly because, while you probably won't be getting as much money back and could potentially spend more money on individual cards, it's both instant and it supports the workers that have kept this game alive for literal decades. So let's get on to the next pack. Do I end up pulling an ultra rare card? Well, of course not. Did you really think I'd be that lucky? Now let's get on to the actual game part of things. One of the most fun mechanics of playing these types of games are the sheer number of variety present. Each of these booster packs belong to a set, which have hundreds of cards to choose from, adding their own unique style of gameplay to the game at large. It's why there's always so many different types of packs to choose from. They're all expansions to add to the game. Some of them shake things up, while others do literally nothing. Yeah, I'm looking at you, Evolutions. The structured gameplay in each TCG is radically different from one another, but the base theme is basically creating a strategy around your deck. Like, take the infamous Exodia deck from Yu-Gi-Oh! One that's win condition is finding 5 specific cards and being able to play them. Typically a deck like that would seem overpowered, but consistently finding 5 pieces of deck is actually really hard in a 40-card deck. So such a deck is often accompanied with other cards that help it keep consistent, letting the user stall the game out or even find the specific cards to disrupt his opponent while the right cards get drawn. While it's a slower deck that might rely on a lot of luck, the fun of it comes from the anxious nail-biting back and forth between getting the right card and your opponent slowly getting closer to finishing you off before you have a chance to get things going. And alternate win conditions like that are certainly there. Usually the standard win conditions are the majority of gameplay, like Yu-Gi-Oh's draining of life points, Magic's taking your opponent's life total to 0, or Pokemon's taking 6 prize cards. So this gives you the freedom to stack your deck with powerful cards, like Blue Eyes the White Dragon from Yu-Gi-Oh! That can do devastating damage. That, or a life gain deck in Magic the Gathering, which would keep your life total rising as your opponent struggles to knock you all the way down to 0. All the while, you're slowly whittling them down just as well. The multiple amount of creatures that in their own little ways play around with them keep things fun and interesting, including things like Pokemon GXs or V cards. They're very powerful creatures, but in turn you're giving your opponent a much easier way to get 6 prize cards. While on the other hand of things, Magic's tribal mechanics can have all of your creatures end up buffing each other, just like the ever-infamous Sliver deck, where just one of each allows each other sliver to do things like dealing more damage or being able to regenerate after being killed, or even flying over the head of the other creatures on the battlefield. In addition to this, there's something else called the color wheel that, at least that I know of, applies to Pokemon in Magic the Gathering. This is where the different color corresponds to the different type of cards that are generally represented, like black in Magic the Gathering does. Black does a really good job of destroying your opponent's creatures and trading away life points to gain an advantage at the game, all the while struggling to have creatures that can deal a lot of damage or can outlast attacks. There's also the Veratyping, or pink, in Pokemon. These cards have a ton of abilities that can help your entire team out, but they do little damage in comparison to the other types. I can honestly say the fun level and the ways that these interact with each other only seems to ramp up every time a new mechanic comes out. This makes things almost drastically different whenever a new set comes out, except for Evolutions. Which leads me to talk about why I'm opening these packs in the first place. The collecting side of the game. What I'm actually looking for here is a shiny Charizard V. This set's most coveted card, and apparently is so rare that it's worth $600 or so on eBay. It's so outrageously rare that the entire set literally sold out in just one day. Seriously, I dare you to find Champion's Path in your local store. It's these coveted cards that make collecting for me so fun though. I've collected a ton of cards throughout my journey while playing this game, and although a majority of it's worthless, I've grown rather fond of what I've collected, and I just almost have a nostalgic attachment to it. Some of the things that I collected are a little bit of value, which arguably can gain a ton more value over the years, but there's just something about it just sitting there that makes me want to add to the collection, especially when I see newer cards that are released that are just perfect. I'm not exactly sure when it was when I went from a player of the game to a collector, but it's probably in between trading cards with friends and seeing my collection grow to, well, a collection. Now, I don't know much about the other trading card games.
Okay, Blink, I think everyone kind of gets it. You've never played anything but Magic and Pokemon. You're good, doing great. See you later. Bye. See you later.
I'm trying, okay?
I know, and you're doing a great job at it.
I hate you! Now, I don't know much about the other trading card games, but Pokemon and Magic seems to have a lore to them that draws me in every time a new set releases, and almost makes me want to just really go out and buy all the packs. And by that I mean go out to my local gaming store and buy the single card that I want. Obviously, Pokemon is a collection of adorable critters with some really awesome and awe-inspiring artwork. But throw this shiny thing in front of my face and of course anyone would want it. I mean, I do now. I mean, seriously, do you know how much this thing is worth? On top of that, there's beautiful recreations of cards that have already been printed in different artwork, of which are simply gorgeous seeing it in person. It's basically candy for my eyes, and it really makes collecting that much more worth it while looking back on it. And while I'd love to talk about the lore of the video games making the cards more desirable, well, mostly due to the lore surrounding them, I'd like to shift over to Magic the Gathering because, arguably, and probably more controversially, they do a pretty good job of actually telling an interesting story to follow. In early 2019, there was a new set of Magic the Gathering called War of the Spark, which was a massive story finale to a multi-year-long saga, one of which saw a conclusion to a ton of different arcs culminating into the stories of previous sets. I don't know if you know this or not, but most sets from Magic the Gathering actually have their own stories accompanying their releases, all of which are usually free to read online, and usually have pretty interesting stories to follow. And of those, they're usually pretty consistent at keeping the narrative going with these characters of the game and the regions that they explore. Now, while this set kind of failed at being the epic finale that the readers had hoped for, the setting, the culmination of familiar characters, and the narrative themes present were incredibly exciting. Despite the execution, this set featured beautiful new artwork, intriguing Japanese-styled cards with alternate art, and just in general was a very memorable set, for one reason or another. I can't tell you to go out and buy these cards for they're still cheap, promising you that their value is only going to go up or something. But it's incredibly sentimental seeing these characters that we've seen in separate stories all amassing together into a really cool showdown. One that the cinematic trailer set up before all this really built up this sentimental conclusion that we were all owed. But something kind of ruined that. Despite the shade that I'm throwing at the Book of War of the Spark, this set really does mean something to me. And I don't doubt that there will be more sets to come with this level of narrative dissonance, narrative relevance. And with that, I suppose it's time to open up that last pack. Now, I'd react to what it actually is, but I've recorded this before actually opening the packs, so if it's something good, then yay. If it's not, then you'll probably be able to tell because, oh no. No, don't do that. No, come on. It's okay. I'll get it next time. You know, this would be really awkward if it was actually the Charizard. So you've peeked into the mind of a coveting collector, a hopeless gambler, and a salty gamer. And hopefully that was enough to at least let you know the appeal of trading card games. And if not, then hopefully you at least have some sort of respect for it. After all, you've made it all the way to the end. And if that's the case, you must have picked up something. Either way, I'm Blinkehyo, and I really appreciate you joining me here today. And on top of that, an enormous, grandiose, amazing thank you to my two awesome Patreons, Lord Bus and Jamie. Yeah, I give you guys nicknames. What you gonna do about it? I seriously love you guys. And if you'd like to join them, then you can get a couple updates on what I'm up to. And for the higher tiers, you can even make me say 100 words for you. I mean, if you want me to. But once again, thank you all so much for making it all the way to the end. Do those YouTuber things if you really enjoyed the video, and have a great day. I'll see you tomorrow.